All right, guys. So today we got a very interesting topic. I saw a post on Facebook. What was, I guess, the breaking news as of the moment, 4 hours ago. ABC's News posted about a statue of Robert E. Lee being taken down, which is obviously something that's a lot of people have contingency against, or I don't know. There's different opinions on the situation. So when there's hotbed topics like that, I like to see the warfare that happens in the comments.
That's your first mistake.
And it's very interesting to see the different opinions. It's actually a very, very divided front on that issue as a whole. It's been something that's been going on for a little bit now. People talking about statues being taken down, a lot of which are of Robert E. Lee, but Civil War monuments in general of the Confederate generals and whatnot. So we wanted to just take a look into the comments and see the different viewpoints and just discuss some of that stuff.
Yeah, just react to them.
Yeah. So we're starting with the first one. No names are going to be included here, obviously.
Right.
It says these type of statues belong in a museum, and with the context of why and when they were made, which I guess is a pretty in-between way of saying it. It means that you want to. I would assume that person's saying that let's try to have some sense of understanding history as we were taught it. But what's the purpose of having it in a situation where it can be glorified? And I don't know. That I guess it goes into the whole thing where a lot of people are like, is it destroying their culture? I guess I don't know. I think personally, if you talk about the whole thing with culture, it's just like, does your culture offend? Like, then you may want to think about it a little bit. But
right, like I would agree with putting it in a museum because it's kind of like the Holocaust museums, right? That you see. So you would just put all those statues there and just be like, well, this happened because they fought for slavery and they just explain the whole history behind it. So it's like having that common ground in the middle. I think that would be acceptable. Like you don't have to destroy the statues. Just put them away in a museum but they shouldn't be out like in public as if we're still being ruled by the Confederacy, especially for people that are like John Quez that have those ancestors that were directly impacted and enslaved, and they have that generational trauma, especially because the civil rights wasn't that far. That wasn't that long ago. Not even 100 years since then, and it hasn't even been it hasn't even been 200 years since they outlawed slavery. So, like, I just think this is really recent, and you shouldn't have these statues up. Like when Germany was defeated by the Allied powers, right, World War II. It's not like they kept the statues of Hitler around for historical reasons. Like they put all that away, including all the Nazi stuff. So you're not erasing history by taking down statues. Like
trust me, the people that were involved remember it. So like, I just don't really think what's the purpose of like, hey, we're trying to maintain it. Like, what are we maintaining there? There was no growth of the country like that of any importance is going to matter in that sense. If we're talking about people that were damaged by it, still remember the damage by it, and whether we live that or not. I mean, there's plenty of documentaries, movies, and things that make us remember what Robert E. Lee was and what he did. So that's the case. This other one was, I feel sorry for the people in this comment section that think people only learn history through statues. You are proving that our educational system needs to be updated. That is very valid. So, I agree with that.
Right, like because they act like it's a all or nothing type of game. Oh, you remove the statue, you're destroying history completely. It's like, bro, there's a shit ton of documentaries like the Civil War and all that, like the context of it. It's in plenty of history books. Plenty of people have just published independent, like not in school type of history books, but just independent books, but like by doctors and stuff in the field. So. You're not erasing anything. It's never going to go away. Like that history of the Civil War and that side and why they did what they did is it's impossible to erase. I mean, a couple statues like being taken down and something else that better reflects our society today being put up is not going to erase anybody's history. That's silly.
No.
And this guy said there's a difference in remembering history and celebrating it. Yeah, and the thing is with the statues. You're implying that you're celebrating this heritage, which you shouldn't be celebrating this type of heritage, given how it was rooted in a lot of racism and atrocities against other human beings. So, I just don't see the sense in keeping these statues up. And I mean, it just like, because it's kind of like a statement. If you have these statues up, you're basically saying, well, the government or the society endorses these ideas.
Yeah.
So
That is a true point. I mean, when it came to stuff like that, these things, a lot of times these things were created in the idea of, like I said, celebrating the person, seeing what light that those group of people could have saw in them. But if that's no longer existing concept, there's no reason to keep perpetuating that. We have plenty of monuments that are supposed to represent the good of a person, and we don't really need anything around that. There's nothing that you can say was particularly good. But yeah, I see a lot of people talking about it belonging in a museum. I think that's a very common thing. So let's see. Oh, that's the stupid the country guy here.
oh yeah, that comment's really funny.
Yeah, he said they're removing my history.
They're removing my history.
Said the masses who think reading is reading is boring and got to see in history class in high school. Jesus. I mean, yeah, all right, well, I'm going to just put it simply. We live in Alabama, so
Yeah.
a lot of the type of people who are going to be against that concept, a lot of which live in this state, because the state was part of the Confederacy.
Like, that's where the capital of the Confederacy was at, actually.
Yeah, it was. So it's like, yeah, they're going to feel more intensely about it. Obviously, this guy was making a mockery of that concept, which is pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think any group should know if their history is detrimental. Like, I feel like if black people had something that they knew was destructive towards another race, they would not exalt that particular thing. I don't really think many groups like to remember their bad side. They want to know that they did it to not repeat it, but there's no reason to just have it there and then have this weird disconnect between it being a part of history. Because it's like, my question for those people is, what is it that you're remembering? Like, they fought for your freedoms, I guess, which I guess, like, the Civil War is supposed to be about states' rights or whatever, but the right that was most critical was
the
slavery.
right to have slavery.
Yes.
Like,
So that's one of those things that I catch a lot of people saying. I'm like, technically you're accurate, but if slavery wasn't one of those rights, the Civil War would have probably never had its full inception. There probably would have been a lot of, like, governmental standoffs and different laws happening and different establishments of state governments and things like that. But I seriously doubt fighting over it would happen. So, let's see what else we got. Another museum thing. We must realize the damage done when we honor proponents of slavery. Thank you, Virginia. Good, it's good.
I thought this comment is pretty funny right here, because people will use it. Like, I think it's problematic in terms of, like, if the person that won the war were like atrocious people, or committed a bunch of wrongs. Like, you shouldn't just take it as face value. Like, for example, with a lot of the Native American debates, like, I see a lot of people there like, oh, well, the winners write the history. But, like, I don't always agree with that sentiment. But in here, it's actually kind of funny seeing it turn around people that would say that shit, because he says history is written by the winners. In a few decades, the mantra will be, who was Robert E. Lee. That's kind of funny, because it's like turning around people that would say that type of shit to natives.
Yeah.
So I just think it's kind of humorous. He's like basically trolling the troll.
Yeah. The winners technically do write the history, but it's like, we still remember the people that lost in those situations. So, I mean, like, I can get what's going on here. I don't think the history of Robert E. Lee needs to be erased. I don't think that's something. But the concept of the statue, people have to understand, a statue is not how you remember someone. It's the only thing that a statue does is exalt someone. That's always what statues have been. It's been a way of representing in religious and political contexts and monarchies. It's been like that in history forever. No matter what, when you see a statue, you're trying to remember the good in someone. There was no good in Robert E. Lee. That's like same thing with Hitler. He had his statue doing this, that was coming down. Saddam Hussein, it was coming down. All those people, there's no reason to remember their torture, their hate, the things that they did. So, no reason to exalt it, more or less.
Right.
But, like these people talking about going into a museum and all this stuff, that makes complete sense to me because it's like, well, everybody has to understand the damage that's been done. Like you said earlier, the Holocaust Museum exists. Yeah. The Holocaust Museum has a lot of foul things that people are not going to want in display in an open space. But you can choose to go to the Holocaust Museum, or you can choose not to.
Yeah.
I can't choose to just see Robert E. Lee in passing if I'm in Virginia. That's there regardless, or Richmond in this case. But so that's something they have to consider, especially with as far as I know, especially in D.C. specifically, Virginia has a strong black population. So it's like in DC, it's like I think it's overwhelmingly black. It's like 70% or something like that. Yeah. So I think it's something that people have to consider. They're like, this is in a place where like a lot of the people who are looking at it are really going to be like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. But especially it being one of the main hubs of transports of slaves at the very beginning. So.
This person said, we don't have statues of English kings, do we? Nope. People forget most of these Confederate statues were put up in the 1900s as a counter to the Civil Rights Movement. We will keep stories of the Confederate losers in our textbooks and museums where they should be. There's no need to fantasize over giant statues of them. Yeah, I agree. I had heard that before. Like, I mean, it's not like I have a source on hand right now, but I'd heard that before that these were actually not put up during the Civil War era. Most of these were put up after the Civil War, like during Jim Crow or after that shit.
Yeah. People trying to remember the person that held up the ideas they still were trying to perpetuate later on. So it's like, that makes it even worse. Hitler, in his case, they exalted him while he was doing what he did, but also a lot of that was just the fact that he had a crazy ego and a lot of power, so he could force people to do it. These are other people wanting this image to be perpetuated, which is more wild.
Well, yeah, because it wouldn't even make sense that they would, like, I'm sure maybe there was a statue or two, or maybe a little bit, right, maybe made during the Civil War period, but at the end of the day, they were using as much resources as they could to fight the war, so it actually wouldn't be realistic for them to have made all these statues during
No, not at all. It wouldn't make any sense. I see a bunch of people saying that sad, this is horrible, yeah, this makes me mad, this is so stupid. This person says it was history, leave it where it was, get over yourselves, history doesn't change because we remove the reminder. All right, so I would like to make a particular point. Everyone who's talking about it being gone, they are more aggressive than the outside of our guy copying the country people. But yeah, these people are like angry faces, get over yourselves, this won't change history. I think people don't understand. We're not talking about changing history. Yeah. We're talking about like a sense of principle. Just because it's still gonna be there regardless. Everyone remembers. Like I said, there are plenty of reasons for us to know that. We're no reason to forget it. The problem here is that you're letting it stay there, and it's like, well, what does Virginia stand for now? What does the U.S. stand for now? Yeah. How can we even make any of these fights and strides that we're trying to have against even nowadays situations of racism, which obviously are not nearly as intense as those time periods, but these things, it's not a perfect society yet, Yeah. And granted, it may not ever be one, but we have things that still remind us that these concepts are there. The moment that somebody's brains gets blown out in the car, and we see the dynamic, it's easy to remember that, hey, they've been hating for a while, realistically. And it doesn't mean that we think everyone's like that or whatever. It's just, So I really disagree with the comment here when they're constantly saying this whole, removing it doesn't get rid of the history. I think people are not realizing what the intent is. Like, it's not removing. But
like, I also think it's like weird. Like, what's the psychology behind that statement? Like, is it because the way I kind of take it is like, oh well, you can't change the history, as in like I kind of take it as in like, fuck you, like we still dominated you type of thing. Like, that's kind of how I take it, which is weird. It's like, why are you like, if you're not racist yourself in the present day, which they would assert they're not. Yeah. Why are you saying this type of weird ass shit?
Well, I mean, me personally, it's a mixture of things. A lot of times you catch it because you catch some people. They always assert that they're not. It's going to be evident, whether it's still in their blood or not. You're not going to really know until a situation rises where they decide to show you who they really are, if they have that kind of character or not, if they're good in that way or not. But most people are afraid of any sort of incrimination, so they're going to feel like they're walking on eggshells, as they say, when it comes to functioning in society. But when they talk about the history thing, like I was saying earlier, when they say the whole thing about citing the war is remembering that they fought for states' rights, right? So that's supposed to be the concept, which goes into like nowadays you still have people that are more conservative, generally in the southern area, that have this concept about fighting for particular freedoms and what it is that they should be able to do and not, and all that stuff. This is a democracy, etc. And so they will perpetuate that argument every single time whenever they talk about it. So they'll always look clean over slavery. They'll just say my history, my rights. Like when the Confederate flag started getting taken down here in Alabama, we had a huge. You remember that gigantic one that was flown like. You could see it on 65 as you're like traveling through, and it was like I don't even. It was just a bunch of trees and a rock, pretty much, and then it's just this big old Confederate flag, and you're like, why? It's like you just end up having that thing, and when I look at it, I don't have any connection to any because that history isn't like, well, I guess like my ancestors in that way, they suffered underneath that. So if people want to say that they're upholding the history, they have to understand that they're upholding everything. You can't just take a piece. That's the thing about it. Every time you do something in history, you have to understand that you have to own up to every part of it, which means that if these people are like, let's just keep this thing up, they have to recognize them. Like, look, man, if you want to do that, no, now go ahead, be comfortable and say that you appreciate Robert E. Lee's efforts against slavery or for slavery to keep it, because you might as well say that too. You may not believe that, and if that's the case, then go ahead, let a statue be taken down. Understand what your family, not your family, what your ancestors may have caused in history that you're not responsible for, obviously, and move on. It's not like other people are going to forget. Everybody knows it happened. We're trying to make our slate clean as time goes along, acceptable place for everyone, basically. So, I don't know. So how much you try, you can erase history. You can't change history, but you could learn from it. I think people keep thinking that I just don't understand this whole history erase. When history is erased, it's bound to be repeated. Better to be reminded than get rid of it. People are not forgetting about it.
Like the way you exalting it and keeping it around as if we're still under the fucking Confederacy. It's like you're trying to fucking repeat it. It's like you're projecting your own bullshit.
Them putting out the statues was them in the first place. Like you said, if it happened after the fact, they're just trying to perpetuate the concept. The progression was trying to be slowed with them exalting a figure like that. So it's like, I don't understand this argument.
Like these are all like really veiled, like pseudo statements that it's more like, and it translates to what they really think in their head, which is something really racist, but they can't say it because they know they'll get canceled. But it's like, but you can fucking understand the psychology behind these comments. It's clear as day. Like, you're not fooling anybody.
Is there a statue of Obama and Clinton?
I don't know, actually.
It says, shame on them. When are they going to take down Obama and Clinton?
Well, I mean, Obama and Clinton, I mean, sure, they're not perfect people, but they also, like, didn't do anything egregious, like fucking...
I can't really think of... I'm not certain if they do have that.
Yeah.
Somebody says get rid of all the Malcolm X crap too. There are certain statues of him as well. I'm not going to say that's crazy, because he within the movement of civil rights, he definitely was more of the aggressive one, but I still don't think anything Malcolm X did can compare. It's just, I think people don't realize. It's like you're trying to compare a guy being aggressive to stop some oppression he was underneath. It's like right now we have groups that do that. There's terrible protesting that can happen. I can attest to the fact that Black Lives Matter doesn't do everything perfectly smooth. It's not the case. I wouldn't say they don't represent the majority of the group, but there's always going to be someone that doesn't do something as smoothly. But there's Malcolm X being sort of him having his aggressive approach, trying to fight back the way he's being fought. And then there's beating people, slaving them, raping them, giving them the scraps of food, letting their children die, and then throwing them out not to learn anything as they try to struggle their way up in society, and the remnants being still felt to this day. Like, there's a difference. There's a complete difference. Yeah. So I think some people have to understand the intensity. This guy says they can take down all the monuments they want to, but it won't change the fact that it really happened. Like, all right, sad, learn from history, erasing history. They need to put them in a Confederate War Memorial Park. Okay, I guess it's similar to like the
museum thing.
The museum thing.
Yeah, I mean a park, whatever. I mean,
I would like to just discuss this guy's Facebook profile picture before I read what he said. This man, well, I'll show it to you. This is the epitome of the comment here. He just literally said communist. Yeah.
Oh my god! Doesn't
EHH.
even understand what common. He doesn't. He probably can't even fucking define communism.
I think what people try to do is similar to like, so you know how North Korea tried to create like this system of like making everything look like it happened in a particular way and controlling the history books and etc. Them knocking down a statue does not mean that they're going to rewrite the history books. To be honest with you, right now the history books make colonists and people from that time period look even better than they actually were. So right now it's like, really, if you want to rewrite the history books, if you're worried about that, because already there's a lot of lies in there, go ahead and incriminate yourselves more, because there's just a shit ton more. So I just don't think.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about like Native American history, what the Spanish did, like there's a lot of revision and rewriting that's completely false with that. But I don't see any of these people bitching about that.
This one's good. Monuments are not for traitors. I like
right,
that.
like, dude, that's another thing that I always thought was weird. It's like that's what I've noticed. So like, you got a lot of Americans that are they're very patriotic in the U.S., right? And they're all about the military and supporting veterans. But then it's like they support the Confederacy. It's like, do you realize the Confederacy was a bunch of traitors that tried to split from the United States? So like that's kind of a weird dichotomy. Like, oh, you support the U.S., but you support they're completely opposed against each other. One fought the other and triumphed and destroyed them because they were traitors. So how can you be patriotic and a traitor? Like you're basically that doesn't make. It
doesn't
sense.
work. I think what people are trying to say. I try to play devil's advocate to at least understand the mindset, but it's still ineffective, because it's like these people will say that and they're like, okay, these people were supposed to fight for the freedoms. That's why they tried to secede from the Union. But I'm like, but there were terrible acts being committed, which is why it's the case. If we're worried about freedoms in that way, you know how many things the U.S. would just let happen? That would be ineffective. Then people could never live comfortably. So, and these things are still being perpetuated to this day. You got crazy people saying, go back to your country, or this, that, and the other. It's just all that wild stuff. And it's just like, well, that's supposed to be the freedom you're supposed to hold on to? Your right to hate? That's good. I mean, you can hate somebody, but you don't have to show everybody. I'm like, you don't have to exalt these people while they're doing that. It doesn't make sense. So, this guy said something. This comment's very long. I'm just gonna try to like paraphrase. He's basically saying the South should hold on to its monuments and accept everything that's associated with that. They said the heritage of Black Americans in slavery is nothing to be ashamed of. It's one of hard work and building America. Many things were built by them, even that we use in society. Example, the Capitol building. This guy's comment's extremely long. Okay, so this guy basically was trying to talk about the concept of how Black Americans have established a lot of elements within the country, which is, I guess that's true. We have built a lot of elements there. I mean, they're talking about building the Capitol building. Yeah, they did. They did it as slaves. So I like, we're not ashamed of being slaves. That's not the shaming part. The shaming, it's offense. There's a difference. It's like, I think people were thinking like seeing Robert E. Lee makes us be like, we were in that place. Oh, woe is me. Well, we were snatched from our own country and brought over here. What are we going to be ashamed of something that was forced? Like, that's not a shaming element. What's shaming is for people to still think that's okay. That's the people who should be ashamed of that.
Yeah.
We're just more or less offended by the fact that that's still out there. This guy went on forever. I guess he was trying to have a history class in the Jesus. All right. But yeah. You say, what's wrong with this country disgraced by a few? Okay. Dumbness.
They're saying that we're disgracing the country somehow.
Yeah, I think that in itself sounds really messed up. If she's saying what I think she's saying, Black Americans are obviously a minority, and if we have an effect on something like that in the history that they are saying is erased by that, we're disgracing that. It's like, so you're telling me that a minority shouldn't have any power? That's what I hear. That they can't be allowed to be offended by something. That's a problem. That would destroy pretty much every sense of progress in any front. Whether that's Native Americans, Black Americans, Asian Americans, or LGBTQ stuff, all that. It kind of destroys a lot of that sense. Because realistically, those groups are minorities. as a collective, they equal the majority. But I think that's I don't know. I feel like it just doesn't make sense. I feel if it was something simpler, I could feel like that would be okay. It's like when somebody's like, "Oh, I'm mad that this person isn't in this." Like, when you're looking for like representation type stuff, that's not as complicated. There's ways around trying to understand that. But if it's something as simple as this guy's statue being up, I think it makes sense to just take it down. I mean, the thing is 12 tons. I think people are thinking they're going to blow it up. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm pretty sure they're going to find a place to put it. So
yeah. Oh, this chick, dude, this is like one of the clearest ways that says, "Oh, I'm a fucking racist." Like right here. So because some people are offended by American history, we lose a statue. Well, what if the Martin Luther King statue offends me? Do I get to make that removed also? Unfair. It's like, dude, if you're offended by Martin Luther King, who stood up for civil rights, you're a racist. I am sorry. You just outed yourself. You're an idiot. Holy shit.
I hate when people try to do this if this then that argument. It's one of the dumbest ones because I'm like, you just lost
complete sense of what the whole point was about.
Yeah.
It's about what was done that this person is being exalted for, not the simple fact that the history is there and you're offended. If you're offended by Martin Luther King, the only way you can be offended is by being a racist. There's no other way that can work. There's nothing he did that was harsh. Like I said, I even gave him a little pass on Malcolm X because I was like, okay, he was a little aggressive.
Right.
I give you that.
Martin Luther King,
but
bro,
you're talking about the
man.
guy who actually made the proper strides, that got the steps rolling. Like that's a different story. So if you're saying, what if he does that? What if he makes me upset? I'm like, there's nothing else other than you being a racist that can cause that.
Yeah,
because I'm not being a racist by hating a guy who wanted to enslave our people. Am I being racist for that? That didn't make any sense. I like white people now. I don't judge them for what their ancestors did. I only judge the ones that exalt their ancestors' wrongs.
Yeah,
that's the difference. So I just don't understand that. That is literally the epitome.
Yeah. You might as well just say you're racist, dude. Just say it. Like, I have more respect for that if you actually are upfront about it. Like,
this guy said, which was good, mentions what we talked about earlier. Stop crying about the removal of these statues. Germany and Iraq do not have statues of their leaders and generals who committed atrocities. The premise behind the Daughters of Dixie were to keep the memory of what the Confederacy stood for alive and nothing else. Time for those statues to be recycled. That's exactly what it is. It was to keep the concept of the Confederacy alive. The Confederacy, fighting for states' rights, primarily slavery. It's like if you just, it's a simple chain, man. Like I just don't get why people don't see that. I guess it goes into the further worried about being canceled, the softness they think society has gone into. But I'm like, if you are not the one being oppressed by that, then you can't have a say because you literally don't know what it feels like. Right now, these group of people that are doing this, the first time they felt some sense of being fought against because now they're being told the things that they upheld were wrong. Yeah, it sucks for you, I guess, but I don't know what to say. So that guy's pretty right. I say here's a real complicated solution to people who are quotation marks offended by the statues. Don't look at it. All right, so this is stupid because of what I just said earlier. If like we said with Hitler, they took down a statue and they threw it in a museum. I can choose not to go to a museum. That's pretty easy. I didn't choose to decide to go to the beach and see the Confederate flag that's like freaking the square footage of a house's foundation hanging up on the side of a mountainside. Like I didn't choose to see that. I didn't even expect it when I rolled upon it. These people that are doing that, they live there. What are you going to tell them? Move if you're offended by it. I'm like, no, just take the thing down. That's much more easy. Yeah. What's hurting them? I want these people, if they're there, even if they got it, to say it in the comments. Tell me, what is it that actually bothers you? And when you get to the answer of freedom, I want you to explain further. I want you to actually get to the depth of what freedom you feel like you lost in that case. If you want to say him okay, tell me what he did wrong against white people, other than make us actually live well. I want to know that. And if you have that answer, then put it in the comments. That's my opinion on that. So let's tear down statues of MLK. Racist. Let's keep going. Movie history is asinine.
You know, one time I debated with this chick, not on this comment section, but it was on something similar. And I told her, we were just going back and forth about how the Confederacy was evil, I guess, like because of the slavery thing. That's what I was saying. Like, and she was defending the Confederacy, and so this is probably a low blow on my part. But eventually, I was like, well, if you support the Confederacy, whatever, like at least be honest about it. And she went back and deleted all her comments, dude.
Oh wait, I think yeah,
because she got scared, bro. I was like, bro, well, I mean, why are you here defending them?
I mean, that becomes the thing, because if you want to lay it down, just blatantly say. So you want to say that you're into all these particular monuments, like so. That's the Confederacy, the South. The South was part of the Confederacy, the state. That's what you want, and then they have to really think about that, because you're taking the whole package that happens.
Yeah.
You can go ahead. Everyone's gonna be like racist. You don't mind the fact that black people were enslaved again. All these things will be suitable. You think yourself superior, etc. Go ahead, because you can't, like I said, you can't just perpetuate a small idea from this kind of thing. Like I said, I understand that people think it's easy to get fooled and compare it to like that idiot earlier who said communism. I think a lot of people don't understand what governmental structures exist. Like, for example, the U.S. is declared a democracy, even though it's not. It's a democratic republic, which means that it's not as free as you act like it is. There's certain things that have to be understood to make sure that the account of living for every group is amendable, like it makes sense for everyone. And this is one of the examples here. So,
I also think it's interesting when they're like, well, I want to honor my ancestors and my heritage. And it's like, well, it's like, why do you only pick that specific time period to honor these ancestors, like these really racist people that fought in a war, like how about you honor the people before the Civil War, that were like part of the United States, or just another time period of ancestors? Why do they have to be that particular period?
They will never go overseas and honor the English settlers that they came from. It will never be any of that stuff. Like, you can get a good example. Granted, I know that Wakanda's not real, but when Black Panther came out, you could see people were in their African pride when that happened. We're definitely not Africans at this point. You know what I mean? We're definitely well blended into to America. A lot of different genetics involved in our makeup. But we still have this sort of understanding and pride of the African culture. I don't see that with Europeans. That is or white Americans. It's not really a thing. And I'm not telling them they have to, but it's like, if you want to pick something, don't pick the one thing that oppressed a bunch of people.
Yeah, like, why do you always pick the worst thing possible? Like, there's plenty of other ancestors you could honor. Like, that's probably just like one generation of ancestors out of countless generations. Like, why do you always pick that one?
I don't understand that part. Plus, the other thing on top of that is like, I hear a lot of people that say that, I'm going to honor my ancestors and say that. A lot of people that I know that are down here in the South, like I made an intent on even trying to understand this with like some of our friends, and I'll ask them questions like, how many of your grandparents can I meet? And it's about like an 80-20 kind of thing. About 20% of them I can't. The other 80 I can't. And it's not necessarily that they're full-blown racist, but their heads are still locked into the era that they're from. Yeah. And I don't blame them. They're on their way out eventually, and that's what they know. It's just the reality of the fact. So, but we're talking about people honoring the concept. They still, even with their mentality, that was still oppressive then. It was acceptable, but because it wasn't illegal, or that there was no sort of like social, you couldn't get any social like damnation from it. There's no canceling. There's none of that. And I don't even get with canceling on everything, because sometimes it's unnecessary. Yeah. But something like that, it's like, oh, go ahead, take what you deserve in a situation like that, because you're honoring something too intense here. Yeah. So, but honestly, we can go on forever on this. There's a crap ton of comments, but we mostly just wanted to discuss the kind of the back and forth between this. This is sort of a 50-50 debate I'm seeing here, but a lot of that has to be with the fact that the comments are being overloaded. I've seen mostly white Americans commenting on this post anyways, so you can see how they are split on that, and obviously I don't think any minority group is going to think that's good. So yeah. It's like, I don't think that's going to be the case. But yeah, so that's all we really wanted to do, was discuss some of that stuff. Let us know what you guys think. Like I said, if you got somebody out there that decided to subscribe to the channel but thinks what this was stupid, go ahead and tell me what you thought was dumb. See if you have a real argument. I'll comment back. But aside from that, that's pretty much it. Hope that truth slapped for y'all, but that's it. We'll be back probably next Tuesday, probably. All right, peace.